Hey everybody, it's Susan Girard, founder of the Emotional Intelligence School, and today we're going to take a visit to the parallel universe. But before we do that, I wanted to give you a little update on last week's Facebook Live where I talked about should this be normal, and I told you about a street musician that I encountered when I would walk to my favorite little health food store on the bay. And this particular person looked at me as a sexual conquest, and we're complete strangers. And I talked about how easy it was for me to think about taking a different route, and how I realized that's how I collude with the culture to not be welcoming to women and to not appreciate women in our communities. So what I wanted to tell you is that I took my normal path, and lo and behold, the musician is gone. And I've walked that way twice since our last visit on Facebook Live, and he's nowhere to be found. So what that tells me is that the energy is shifted. I'm fully conscious of what's going on and what I was feeling and how I wanted to deal with it. And that doesn't mean he won't be there next week. He could. But I definitely take it as a positive sign that he wasn't there, and I had happy little walks to my natural food store. So anyway, today we're going to take a trip to the parallel universe. And before we do, we're going to go on the Wayback Machine. And I'm going to take you way back to 2005 when I was getting divorced. And the reason we're going to go in the Wayback Machine is because we want to do a little research before we visit the parallel universe. So I'm going to take you back to that separation because I want to point out what my normal alternatives were and what most women's normal alternatives are when they find themselves blindsided by the end of a relationship. So when I found out that my husband was having an affair and that we were not going to put this relationship back together, I was in quite a bit of emotional turmoil. So there was a lot of internal chaos, and there was also a lot of external chaos. A person that I'd been living with for 18 years was no longer there every day, and that affected me and my son. And then there was dealing with the whole process of getting a divorce, which is a lot of external chaos. Whenever you bring like a profit motive into something as personal and painful as a divorce, it gets chaotic. So I did what most women do. I sought out a therapist. And when I went to see my therapist, for that hour, I felt like, okay, I can do this, like I can get through this. But after that hour was over, until the next appointment a week later, I was in turmoil. Like I was getting triggered left and right. I had PTSD. I couldn't sleep well. And I wasn't eating because I was so overwhelmed by what was happening. So that is what most people do. They seek out a therapist, unless you can't afford a therapist, which is true for a lot of women, and that makes it even harder. And I asked my therapist over and over again, can you tell me what I can do to feel stable and to respond in the moment? Can you give me some tools? Can you give me some skills? Can you teach me some skills? And I don't know if it was because it was 2005 or if it was because the type of therapy that my therapist did She just didn't really have anything to give me. So the next thing that is available to us that is considered normal is taking antidepressants. And I have always been, like I just told you, like I like to walk to my health food store. I've never been one to put chemicals in my body. It just goes against my values, and I've always been very proactive about my health and well-being. So I did not want to do that, but that is, again, what was offered, that was available. So I did, and it did provide relief, and I was glad to be able to have that relief, but it also suppressed my appetite, which I didn't need, and it made it hard to sleep, which I didn't need. And there was a part inside of me that was like, there's got to be a better way to do this besides taking a pill. And I realized that if this pill could give me a certain experience, then I have the potential to have that experience. It's just a matter of, is there another way to get that experience? So I'm digressing a little bit. We'll get back on track. But so that's what women have at their disposal when things like this happen. You know, you might have a supportive family. I really didn't. I couldn't depend on that. But you have therapy if you can afford it, and you have antidepressants. And other than that, you're just white knuckling it through. I did learn some cognitive behavioral techniques along the way because, like I said, my therapist didn't really have anything to give me, and there was no way I was going to feel this terrible between two appointments. Like, that just wasn't acceptable. Okay, so that's our research. That's all the research we're going to do. This is what is considered normal for women in our culture at this point in time when this happens. Now, let's take a visit to the parallel universe, where we will see what it looks like to have this same experience in this parallel universe. So in the parallel universe, there's Susan and there's her husband, and they are not gonna continue to invest in this relationship. But instead of finding out that her husband's having an affair, way before he even decides to do something like that, he lets her know that this isn't really working for him, and he's ready to end this relationship. And you might be thinking, wow, Susan, that is really pie in the sky. Like, that parallel universe is never going to happen. But what I want to say is that what we consider cool in our culture, or like high status behavior, let's call it, is very random. Like, if you wear a certain, like when I was growing up, if you had certain kind of tennis shoes or a certain kind of jeans, that made you cool. It's really that random. So it's not impossible for things like that to happen. It may take some research and strategy and energy, but it's not impossible. So in our parallel universe, Susan finds out way before the affair that things are not working, and maybe they try to work it out, maybe they don't. But because in this parallel universe there's emotional intelligence, and all along people are used to processing their emotions in real time, responding and communicating those things, and that is respected and highly prized, there's not a lot of emotional buildup in relationships. And if the relationship is coming undone, if two people are going in different directions, because we all have our path in life, Sometimes that path is parallel, sometimes it crosses, sometimes it goes the other way. In the parallel universe, the breakup is just maybe a little more slightly intense version of the emotional processing you do every day. So maybe you take a few days off, maybe you join a support group of other people going through similar thing, processing their emotions a little more intensely than usual. So not all of the chaos, not all of the slash and burn, not all of the trying to make one person look bad or the other person look bad, or get more of the spoils of the breakup. It's more like, I call it the least harm method of breaking up, where the idea is to preserve everyone's dignity and to dissolve this union in the least harmful way possible for everybody. And in my parallel universe, we don't even have family courts for this. We just have like mediators to really like help people find what they honestly feel is theirs and what isn't. So that's a little trip to the parallel universe. And I want to encourage you to visit your parallel universe, not for big, huge things like this, but even for small things. So in your daily life, everybody feels a lot of irritation, I do, or frustration. That is normal. And what I like to do is ask myself, what would this issue that's frustrating me be like in the parallel universe? And I actually think about it. And it gives me so many great ideas for where I want my life to go and for the kind of culture I want to create. And it also tells me important information. Like, for example, toward the end of my marriage, we would have conversations that just would not go the way that I thought they would go. And so one day I actually started writing out, like, what was the response I really wanted? And I wrote it down, and when I read it and I compared it to what I got, it told me so much about what I really wanted in a relationship. And it showed me how I really wasn't getting that. So I encourage you to visit your own parallel universe where there is you in that universe with the same kind of circumstances you're having, but it turns out in completely different ways. And before we end talking about the parallel universe, I want to tie this in with emotional intelligence. A lot of times we tolerate so much until we just can't anymore. And a way to stop doing that is to really be aware of what you're feeling and know that your feelings are just trying to protect you. They're trying to give you the right information. They're trying to help you get what you really want. That's why it's really so important to be clear about what you really want, because you want to get what you really want, not like kind of a mashup of stuff with like, you know, it's good, it's not good, it's just a mess. So that's why I love talking about emotional intelligence and teaching women how to tap into the wisdom of their emotions so that you can really get in touch with what you really want and what your emotions are trying to tell you. And if you would like to learn how to develop your EQ, your emotional quotient, your emotional intelligence quotient, maybe it should be EIQ, and you'd like help with that, feel free to contact me, you can PM me in the Emotional Intelligence School Facebook group, or you can write to me at fluid, FLUID, integration, INTEGRATIN, @gmail.com. And thank you so much for coming by this week to take a little trip with me to the past, into the parallel universe. And I really wish you great journeys into your own parallel universe. I know that you'll get a lot of great ideas, and it will help you really hone in and focus on what you really want out of your life. And that's such a huge step. It's like the big first step to actually living the life that you know deep down that you're meant to live. So until next Thursday, thank you so much, and I hope you have an amazing, amazing weekend. Aloha.